Welcome to a dialogue on accountability in the digital age. A dialogue with representatives of a global, multi-stakeholder community.
I'm your host, Frits Bussemaker, and today I'm delighted and privileged to have a conversation with Robin Raskin. Robin, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Fritz.
And allow me to introduce you to the audience. And I'm just going to cherry pick a couple of highlights out of your career because it's so broad and wide. You're currently the founder and CEO of the VEG, the Virtual Events Group, what you're doing right now. But before that, Living in Digital Times, which you sold to the CTA, the parent company of the organization who run the CES. You've organized the Toy Fair, and you're also the editor of PC Magazine in a time when we didn't have any, I would say, tech heroes yet as we have today. And
That's right. No internet. Bill Gates was writing DOS. Steve Jobs was in his garage. So it was a formative time to start a technology journal.
Yeah. So you have that wide variety of experience and insights in the digital technology space. But I want to focus on your role as a journalist because you also call yourself a data scientist and also a recovering journalist. And that's what I want to focus on. And first of all, in all those years, being a journalist and looking at information technology, the digital world coming into your domain, what have you seen, what you would describe as the main changes and challenges?
So many changes. You know, when I started in journalism, you were told to keep yourself out of the story. The story wasn't about you. It was about the thing. So you researched. I trained, I was the editor-in-chief of the publication, so I taught every journalist, keep records of every conversation that you have, record all the facts. We developed tests and rubrics for evaluating things that everybody had to stick by, so that in fact, we were defensible even in a courtroom. You know, I would tell my staff, you can make or break a company by what you write, so it better be correct. And everything should be triple checked. Fast forward, the luxury, we had a little more time. It didn't have to be that minute reporting. Everybody feels like they have to be there first now. So that's one big change, is the urgency to get the story out, whether it's a school shooting or an election or Hamas, whatever it is, to get that story out immediately before you have a chance to really triple check your facts. That's a big difference. And
has that been influenced by digital technology?
Absolutely. You know that every study shows that the younger generation gets most of their news from social media. Social media breaks the stories, and sometimes that's as far as people go. So the influence has been huge. And when you add AI on top of that, you have a recipe for even more immediate journalism in so many ways. And so I make this prediction that already it's happening, but within 2 years, the newspaper that you read every morning will predominantly be written by AIs. They know the stocks, they know the sports scores, they know the facts. And it's very easy for them to learn your style of your publication and to turn those facts into a story that is perfectly admissible. What we need to learn is to identify that as AI helped me write this. We have got to start to be transparent in how we built the stories, which is the second thing that's changed. Now you're a part of the story. So if you read the paper every day, you'll see the journalist saying, I tried to talk to 3 people, but they didn't talk to me, or I used this database, but I'm not sure it's right, or this image may or may not be real. So you're starting to see journalists actually be confused about some of the facts they're reporting on, but weave that into their story. So it becomes the best you can do, which is so different.
Does that make that I translate that, or am I hearing you say where journalists used to write down the end results, the facts they've checked? Currently, you're also writing down the process to indicate, okay, with this particular uncertainty, or this has happened, and this is how far I got.
Exactly. And the big difference, you used to report and say it was the truth. The best you can do now is say, it's my truth based on my reporting, which is very, very different. And that is why you get people reading certain publications and not others. You're seeing audiences gravitate towards the people that they trust. And that is a big difference.
So does that mean the journalists in the area, as we know when you grew up, is that a dying breed? Are they now being replaced?
I think the best of the breed will survive in part because they know how to use these new tools. So let's take for example, I'm doing a story on the Middle East. I use AI I use aerial photos, I use weather photos, I use military information. So I'm drawing on a lot of information, some from AI, large language models, some from other available materials, and reporting a story that is well reported, but also goes through a fact-checking process. Now, some publications are using AI to check the facts now, and AI will get most of those facts right. And I do believe that within, again, 2 years, you can put a human fact checker and an AI fact checker, and they will come up with similar results. So so the good journalist will take all sorts of tools. Like I said, corroborating, how did that accident happen? What was the weather like? Was that stop sign working? How many people did I talk to? And that becomes part of your narrative now. So every journalist is kind of a personal storyteller now, more than ever before.
Okay, so it's now I understand what you're saying here. Then my follow-up question, and I have to think about how to frame that. It seems that the journalism is getting into this new phase. The way you're describing now the use of technology, it's actually making that person much more powerful in the story, and in the storytelling part of the journalism. But if you get into a situation where you say, okay, AI is going to be just as good as the journalist in fact checking, one of the roles of journalism traditionally is being that fifth column. You could say defending democracy, protecting democracy by checking facts. Hey, are you actually, the claims you're making, government, whoever, are they true or not? Do you see a future where we're going to trust an engine to do that job for us? Or do we also always need to have people there because of the accountability question?
I believe we always need people there. And the people, their job will be to take all of this information and curate it so that the story is told factually with supporting information, which may come from AI out there. So AI becomes a tool, and it can happen faster. It would take years to do a constitutional survey of a body of literature. AI can do that in minutes, but it's up to the journalist to then interpret how that fits into the story. So, and it will come up over and over again. The danger, the flip side of that, and I'm going to use an American example for you, is our Democratic National Convention we just had, where they invited 200 influencers, creators to come to the convention, hoping to get a younger vote that watches social media. So some of them, I'm going to say 25% of those 200 talked about issues, whether it was housing or abortion or wages. But most of them just said, "Hi, I'm here at the convention. Look at me. Don't I look great?" And I think that is a danger that because the tools are so immediate and because influencers are now so much in demand, that you end up getting a story that really doesn't do what it intended to do. And so the Democratic National Convention is a great example of them going out, targeting a new breed of influencer journalists, but they weren't really journalists.
Yeah, then it's more about the storyteller than the story itself. So
Exactly.
personality, not, hey, are we actually reporting facts? Now,
Right.
yeah.
But you're seeing it happen, people, there's a new generation who will buy whatever, skin products, pots and pans, food, because the person they love on YouTube or TikTok told them that's what they should do. And they trust that person's advice. And that's where we get into the messy resolution. I am an optimist. I do believe that journalists will continue to have a role. I do think it will be a shrinking population. The best will rise to the top, and then there will be new journalism. There's no reason not to have opinions. I love reading opinion journalism. I just like to know it's a fact. I like reading advertorial journalism. If an olive oil company gives me a good recipe, I'm just as happy as when a journalist gives it to me. So and so much of this relies on our education. And we've talked about watermarking and we've talked about digital images, and there is a true lack of trust now, especially in the younger generation who don't believe anything they see, and for good reason.
Robin, could you expand a little bit on, and this is a discussion we previously had at the AI for Good Summit in Geneva,
Mhm.
but maybe take the listeners along. Okay, what type of techniques and tools are now being considered to help the audience, the public along about, hey, this is fake, or this is not fake, this is authentic. Can you give some examples?
Yeah. So first, let's do the fake. The fake is, show me the Pope wearing his Balenciaga coat and his puffy jacket, and you say that to a Mid-Journey, and your image is created. It used to be, if you had a discerning eye, you could see that maybe the Pope had 6 fingers instead of 5, or he was not wearing, his cross was only half done. So you could see little signs. That's quickly going away. AI is getting so good at replicating images. So you almost have to ask yourself, and there are tests that you can take online to see. Northwestern in University in the States has a great test. They show you images, they ask you if they're real or not, and then they rate you along with other people on how you're doing. And so there's the naked eye, but then there are also programs that are coming out that will detect a pixel is out of place. An eye has your iris, your eyes are a really good indication of what we call liveness, that somebody is really alive in a photo. In a video, it's your breathing. If the chest doesn't move, it's a good tip that it's not happening. But there are now software programs that will look at images and say, that's not real because of the pixels. They look at the capillaries under your skin. They really look at a lot of different features to determine this is a live person or not. But it's a lot like cops and robbers. As good as the software gets, the fake tools get better also.
Basically, what you
That is when you start talking about regulation.
Yeah.
Should a company have to divulge when they have created an image? It was the old, remember magazines that retouched the models? And you always thought they had beautiful skin and they wore great bathing suits. But you knew those photos were retouched. I think we're now at the point where it's so pervasive, we have got to say, this was enhanced with an AI tool and name the tool. Now, should that be legislated or should that be determined by organizations. You would like to think they would self-determine. You would like to think the metas of the world and would make that a policy. Twitter has started something like that where you need to disclose if you've used AI in the creation of your video. Is it enforced?
Okay.
Sometimes.
Because I can imagine that if half of a newspaper is going to be AI produced, somewhere maybe the newspaper should acknowledge, look, all the sports stuff, all the weather stuff, that's all AI produced, guys, and it's just those articles are real life journalists. Is that going to happen, or is that too much?
I think it's going to happen. And you know, we had Nicholas Thompson speak at AI for Good Summit, and he talked about, and he very openly, he is the president of the Atlantic magazine, and he very openly said this was translated using artificial intelligence. This was fact-checked using artificial intelligence. So they are trying to do the right thing in a very chaotic time. I think the New York Times is also, well, you know, the New York Times, for example, is taking OpenAI to court for taking, there's a whole second level where the AI models are ingesting all of the news content from everything and then can spit it back. You know, if I said, Fritz, use your AI and write me a story about the stock market predictions for 2025, you'd give me that story in about 3 minutes.
Yeah, that brings me to a whole other discussion. So far, we've discussed how AI can actually run as a co-pilot, for better or worse, of journalists. And I can still understand that journalists need to learn how to use this as a tool. But it becomes scary if you start to use this technology to produce fake news, produce reports, which are definitely false, but produce them in such a manner that they become believable. So you start to influence
Oh,
a community.
oh yeah, you read about it every day, you know, rogue publications starting with false information. But the other issue, and I'm going to be controversial here, if you think there are going to be as many jobs as there were before AI, you are mistaken. So if you had a team of 10 reporters on a murder case, let's say, you are going to have a team of one or two with your AIs. So yes, AI is a co-pilot, but you used to have humans as those co-pilots. So you don't need the research staffs that you had before. And the sad part of that is most of the entry-level jobs, that's how you started as a foot soldier researching things for a top-notch reporter. That is going to change, I do believe. And will there be new ways for reporters? I think so. There'll be graphics to be made, and there'll be animations to be done, and there'll be movies to be made. So the journalist, I mean, take any major paper, they don't just turn out a newspaper anymore in print. They have a digital version, they have a podcast version, they have a movie version. Those are all going to take people. So it's eliminating jobs in what we call traditional journalism, but it will move them around to other new areas. VR. You're going to have journalists reporting in VR. We'll put on our glasses and immerse ourselves in the story. So we can be in Sudan or you know, I can be there with you physically. And those are going to take different skills. So what I tell journalism schools is it's time to start thinking differently about how you train your students, because they really have to learn the spectrum of what is the possibility of the future of journalism. And it's storytelling in every variety.
So there is a future. We just have to start to relearn the job. The accountability of society, what journalists does, with the impact of digital technology, with the impact of AI. has the possibility to hold people accountable, has that increased or decreased? What's your opinion?
Well, for the moment, I think it's decreased. We're figuring it out. There are organizations that are working so hard on ethical use of AI. I think we will work it out. As I like to say, there's not one silver bullet. There's not going to be one answer. There will be technologies that help you identify misinformation. There will be regulation and legislation. Right now, it's all over the place. I think Europe is a little ahead on thinking about these issues. There will be corporations themselves having to step up the same way they have to now step up with climate reporting and how they use carbon and what their footprint is. They will have to do this with journalism. So every journalist, every media company is going to have to say, and it's very funny because, I mean, Disney, we've been watching CGI created videos forever. Disney never had to say a machine made this, or Pixar never had to say this. And I think now we kind of do. In this new environment, we just need to say, here are the tools, just like you say, here are the actors in this movie. Here are the tools we used in the creation of this thing, whether it's a newspaper, a movie, a video. And I think that will go so far into helping educating people too. People learn when they see what you use to create something.
Robin, a couple of questions before we have to go. First of all, are you optimistic about the future of journalism
It
related?
depends on the day of the week. Yes, I truly am. I truly worry, as you know, in the US now, we're in an election cycle where really the star characters are not the candidates, it's the media behind them, the false information, the true information, the alienation of a generation who does not know what to believe. I mean, they just don't, and for good reason. They're not stupid. You have to work really hard to find the truth. We have to make that easier.
So then two more questions for you. I want to ask you for your advice. First of all, what would your advice be to the new generation of journalists, how to prepare yourself using digital technology or in the context of digital technology? And the second one is, what would your advice be to the general public who has maybe lost a little bit of the trust in journalism?
Yeah, so for journalists, I think you have to think of yourselves as data scientists. You have to think of yourselves as you are telling a story with the help of AI, and use everything and really think about the what ifs. Like, what if this guy says his store was robbed in the dark, but it wasn't dark at that time, or it wasn't raining, or I can go to databases and I can check that. So your instinct should be to double check everything using technology. Your instinct can also be to use technology to brainstorm, to do your first draft, but not to take that as the given. So I really think that every journalism school and every journalist should be thinking about being data scientists as well as journalists. For consumers, it really is the old 3 sources rule. Don't take any one source. At least skim a couple of sources if you're interested in something and you want to know it's the truth. That will at least give you all sides of the equation. And that's been like that for a long time. It's just exacerbated now. And I always like to say second day stories are usually better than first. The first day story, they just want to get the headline out. So don't trust everything you read. And then the second day story, more information comes out.
Does that mean that we leave the very quick, to the minute real-time news maybe to the AI engine, and then we leave the slow journalism to people behind the scene? Like, hey, guys, sit down and write what you've saw. So
Yeah, and I think journalism, there's a lot to be said to remold it. The traditional media has been slow. Have a top headline, that's all I care about right now. But later tonight, I want to dive deep and I want to know more about this story. And they're getting better at it, and they're using different mediums to tell their story. But I think that's the way that we're going. Not everybody's going to want to have the full long, what we call it long form journalism, but a lot of people will. But we've got to make that short form true enough that they're well informed, not just titillated.
well, thank you for giving us a balanced picture between how AI can be a co-pilot, but also going a little bit into the concerns it brings. At the end of the day, I'm glad you're optimistic because you have a good picture and a good insight of what's happening in the world. So if you're optimistic, that at least gives me a little bit of relief that there's still a good positive future for us. Hey,
Right.
thank you so much for joining us.
Love talking to you. Thank you.